Hello, everybody. Welcome to Bearded Reviews. This is Matt from That Matt85, and I'm here with my bud Pat, and we're going about to talk some movies. Say hi, Pat.
What up, yo?
So, on today's show, we got some news stories. We got Pat's introducing a news story. We'll get to that in a second. We got a focus on Christopher Nolan and his movies he's done so far. We'll be going over that. And me and Pat gave each other a movie to review. Not necessarily a new movie because there's not a whole lot of those coming out, but movies that we just wanted to get each other's takes on. And it sounds like we're going to have some fun reviews with those. So let's start with news today. And Pat, if you want to introduce the news story that you have for us.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about the. Basically, I want to talk about the rumors going around with the pedophile ring. It's been talk for a while now that there was a huge pedophile elite ring. It's been going on for years, but it's starting to get more and more attention the last months, couple months especially, but over the last year or two with Jeffrey Epstein getting busted. So I just want to say for anybody who's been listening and seeing or listening to the show and has been seeing nonstop things about Tom Hanks, Google it before you start sharing that stuff and talking about it and saying that he's a pedophile, because there is no proof that he's on that list. It's been proven by multiple sites that it's not accurate. So I just want to say, as of right now, Tom Hanks cleared of being a pedophile. So that's been all over my Facebook for the last week, to the point where I had to Google it, and it's bullshit. So that's one of the main things I want to talk about.
Yeah.
This is going to be a big story throughout the whole year, so it's good to talk about it now. I want to wait before I get more into it to see what names come out, but it looks like there's going to be some names coming out. It's just Tom Hanks is not one of them. Almost everybody who's been come out so far is political, not movies. So it's interesting what's going on, and I wanted to get your take because I know you've looked up a little things since I talked to you about it. But I just wanted to kind of talk about it because I had a lot of questions about this thing, because a lot of names were coming out, a lot of things were being talked about. I'm working 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week right now. So I don't have a whole lot of time to really check into things, but I saw so much about this in Ellen and a few other names that I can't remember. And as of right now, that's all.
I know your advice on like actually learning about what happened before deciding to go off about it is good advice. uh,
Yeah.
Something that doesn't go around a whole lot. In fact, not specifically this topic, but another topic. There's people going off on a headline without actually reading the story whatsoever, and it's kind of funny a lot of times if you actually read the stories that they're connected to and then look through the comments. It'll be hard to find a comment where somebody it's pretty obvious when somebody didn't actually read the story to see what was going on. And the thing about headlines
Yeah.
too is that they're designed to get you to be clickbait, to
Yeah.
to not be entirely truthful, to get you to try and read the whole thing. And heck, a lot of times
Yeah.
they're completely incorrect, if not just misleading. So finding out what's actually happening, finding a couple of different sources is also another good tip.
Yeah.
Not just going based on what one person says, or finding the outcome that you want to be true and then using that as the only basis of your opinion. Um,
Exactly.
all that
Because
being
it's like,
said, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's like they used the whole him getting Greek citizenship thing at this time when everything's going on, with no proof that he had been on the flight list. But they left out the fact that Greece gave them citizenship for charitable work they've done for years, and that his wife is a Greek American who has done a lot of work in her movies involving Greece.
I mean,
So
if you're wanting to
taking things out.
if you're wanting it to be a drama, then you're going to uh, ignore stuff like that, or just say that that was a cover story or whatever. But uh, but as Americans, we enjoy the ability to have dual citizenships if the other country also allows, and a lot of people take advantage of that. So it's really not that surprising. Um, I still don't know a whole ton about it. I mean, it still seems like it's in rumor stages. The best thing I could say about it is the, like, I guess keep reading and seeing what actually comes out instead of jumping on something. That's pretty much my advice and how I take things in general, anyways. I, there's absolutely no need for me to jump on anything like this. Me specifically, or a lot of people in general. Keep an eye out on it if you want, if it's going to affect you a lot, or if you want the U.S. government to do something about it. But rumors are rumors. There's no reason to make a big deal out of them, really. That's, yeah, like, you've mentioned a few names, and I wouldn't be surprised, and I don't know if it's going to have a big impact on me or anything else, anyone else. But I guess we'll see, because Jeffrey Epstein was, that whole story in general is crazy. And the way
I can give you one name for sure that I've heard around. It's from Corey Feldman and Corey Haim. It's Charlie Sheen, and he's the biggest name I've heard said besides Michael Jackson, which is his accusations are known. Apparently Charlie Sheen raped Corey Haim and Corey Feldman. That's been around for years. So I don't know if you ever heard that or not, but that's the only big name that I could think of off the top of my head that's being named.
Did they go back on Bill Clinton?
Well, Bill, I'm talking about movies.
Bill Clinton, as far as movies go, yeah.
From what I can understand, the reports about Bill Clinton have not been cleared up. So
okay,
it makes a lot of sense. It sounds like Bill Clinton's going back. It sounds like Bill Clinton and Alan Dershowitz, outside of Prince Andrew and a few other names that have been listed, are like more like international and business tycoons. Bill Clinton and Alan Dershowitz were the big two this week that things look very bad for them right now.
So, and here's the way I look at it too. It doesn't surprise me in a lot of ways.
Clinton definitely doesn't surprise me. Dershowitz, I don't know too much about other than him working on the OJ case, but Clinton doesn't surprise me.
And not even just the names that are coming out, but the fact that everything to do with Epstein's been pretty shady, and Epstein's wife has still been pretty shady.
And the president is wishing her well, which is interesting.
And when you got, well, okay, so I don't take anything Trump says.
Yeah, I don't.
Not just to heart.
Yeah.
I think I think so many times Trump has no idea what he's talking about, and he just says stuff. That's the best way I have to explain it.
Exactly. But the funny thing about this is, though, that he has links to Epstein.
I'm sure he does.
He says that nice things about her. Yeah, his base is riled up about the left on this, and it's making it out like it's all like the Hollywood left that are involved in this, and it's politicians that Donald Trump has had ties with in the Clintons for years. He has ties to Alan Dershowitz, and
that kind of goes to, I mean, another thing I was thinking about. If you think politicians really care about their politics, they're very few and far between. They care about their job and maybe the jobs of their colleagues, and they're willing to get along with other people if it helps them, or work with other people if it helps them, or change their views if it helps them. So, yeah. I mean, by comparison, talking more about actors and their integrity almost means a little bit more.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I was saying, it was such a crazy thing, and there's not as much coming out about it as there should have been, and now there is. And when you see something like that, there's usually big powers in the background that are doing one thing or another to hush it up or hide it or whatever they need to do. Okay, so changing topics. Uh, Disney has announced that they are. They announced a few times that they're pushing Mulan back. Now they announced that they're going to be bringing it to Disney Plus, but not just Disney Plus like they did with Artemis Fowl and a few other movies. They're bringing it to Disney Plus and starting a premium feature where you have to have Disney Plus first of all, and then second of all, you have to pay what they're saying is $30 to watch whatever movies that they're going to be skipping theaters for. Mulan is the first one that they've specifically announced this for. And on a funny side note, an owner of a local theater, I'm not sure where exactly, videotaped himself taking the gigantic Mulan cardboard stand-up that they had in the lobby and chopping it to pieces angrily with a fireman's axe. Because movie theaters are taking these possibilities of skipping theater to heart. Let me tell you, it's personal for them. They don't care if movie theaters go out of business not being able to make money, as long as they don't go out of business not being able to make money.
Pretty much.
But so Mulan is not the only one. Disney's going to be doing other things. I believe whatever theater made a agreement with Universal so that they could put movies out up to 2 weeks before they put them in theaters also, or their release date for theaters. I don't know what the exact wording is for that, but it's looking like at least until coronavirus is not a concern anymore, that more of these theater movies are going to be getting home releases. Granted, you might be paying $30 for them. What do you think about, I guess, all of this?
Well, I won't be paying $30 for just Mulan. I'm waiting to see what else they're gonna have out. If that $30 gets you access to all the movies that they have coming on there, I might be interested in it. If it's just $30 on movie, I'm not interested.
That might be true. You know what? Now that just because you mentioned that really fast, I don't know if it's specifically $30 for each movie that they have on their premium thing, or if it's $30 to get the premium access and then you get all the movies that are in there.
Yeah, no, because I read an article about this, and I knew they were doing this. The way that I read the article, I thought it was $30 just to watch Mulan.
That's a lot better.
I paid $30. I ain't paying $30 to watch any movie.
Yeah, my thought with $30 is let's find 2, 3, 4, 5 other people that want to pitch in and share an account, because that's what's going to happen if they're charging that much.
Exactly. As for the movie industry, this is just the way things are. And it's not just coronavirus. Things are going this way anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And you can blame the movie studios all you want. It's not the movie studio's fault. It's just the market has changed. People can have faster access to their movies at home. They don't want to go to the theater if they can watch something on Netflix, even if it's something that they've already seen, or if it's not a new movie they haven't seen yet, or anything like that, or something. It's just the way things are. Internet has made the movie theater business obsolete, just the way it made CDs obsolete, just the way it made it's just the way it is. You can blame movie studios all you want, but the fact of the matter is this is a business, and if you're in a business like that, you adapt or you die.
You know, it's
movie studios are adapting. Movie theaters are dying because they're not adapting. That's the reality of the situation.
It's surprising to me that movie theaters can be so unempathetic to a business that is having the exact same struggle they are. Movie distributors, movie studios are having the exact same problem, and you would think they would be able to understand, like, hey, we're losing a bunch of money, or just simply we're not making as much money, because that's another way to think about it too, with especially movie theaters. If they're not operating, their budget that they're spending is maybe property are rental, if they're renting something, are I don't know how much expenses they can have with a theater that they have shut down. They're not having people in it. They don't have the electricity on. They're not making hot dogs or whatever. Uh, they can't be losing, like literally losing much money. They're just not making a bunch of money. And I know with a lot of publicly traded companies, they don't really look at losing money. They have a profit margin that they expect to hit for a year or for a quarter, and if they're not hitting that margin, everything below it, quote unquote, is a loss for them. But that's not
Yes.
really reality. Reality is if they're not literally losing money because they're spending money that they're not able to make back. Like, for example, if they had to
Yeah.
keep the electric on the place, they got electric bills that they're not paying. That's a little more understandable. But if they're able to just shut the theater down, they're not losing money, or at least not very much whatsoever. Uh, and that, I guess, is a different topic for a different day for a different podcast. But not making as much money is different than losing money, is what I'm trying to get at here.
Yeah, exactly. It's not really losing money, and that's not making what they are supposed to. They have written out that they made, so it's a written off loss. That's how business works.
Yeah, there's also that too. I'm not going to pay as much taxes because I didn't make a bunch of money. Is basically what happens
Exactly.
with writing it off.
They're trying to get their bottom line.
So, as far as a similar topic here, we're going to be going to a last news story. Is I could have picked out any specific movie. I'm picking out Tenet, although you kind of informed me about Tenet specifically. But movies all over the place are being delayed again. I guess they were kind of aiming for when they thought theaters would be opening up. And some theaters are opening up certain places, but some places they aren't. For example, the theater by me was supposed to open up about a month ago. I've driven past it several times. It's been empty, and there's a sign up saying that the property's for sale. I don't know if that's the property that it's on or the property around it because there's a huge field around it. So it may have gone out of business. But I don't think theaters are open here because our governor hasn't really opened anything. Theaters, they want the big numbers. They know that movies do better right when they're released. If half the country doesn't have theaters open, they're not going to want to open movies for the other half because they're going to miss out on the half that isn't open. But in general, movies are being pushed back all over the place. If you're seeing a release date that is for the month of August, possibly even into September, chances are it's going to be pushed back. And it's not really that surprising. What do you think about all the pushbacks?
I think it's movie theaters. It's like you said, they know the first week is the best week to do it, and they're looking at a huge loss on Tenet, especially if they cut this. They're gonna probably, from what I'm reading on Tenet, they're gonna do special screenings Labor Day and then push back the U.S. release and try to build up anticipation, even back up more to get a good opening weekend here, and they're gonna release it internationally from in countries that are more over Corona than we are right now. So that sounds like it's going to be the model. They're going to try to make their international markets. They're going to hold off on U.S. releases and build up anticipation. People going in droves to see all these things they're going to have on the place. And I get it. They're going to lose money out the ass if they do it that way. At this point, the smartest thing is to wait until they got the green light and everything's safe, and then push out as much movies as they can and make a lot of money.
Yeah, it's kind of almost playing a game of chicken, where it's kind of like we could make some money right now, which would tide us over, or and in the long run lose out, or we can make a lot of money later, and they're probably doing the right thing right now for themselves and for everyone else, really, by holding it till later. I mean, unless they want to release it for video on demand, then they could probably make a good deal of money that way too. People are willing to pirate movies and stuff if they don't have access to it, if they don't have the money to pay for it. But if you give them a way to access it through the internet, people have, like myself. I'm in a pretty small place, but I have a 5.1 Dolby Digital surround sound. I have a super high def 4K Sony screen. I have a 4K Ultra Blu-ray player, are the means to stream 4K. I have a really nice setup. Not as amazing as going to see in a really really good movie theater, but pretty darn close. I don't mind paying to see it at home, especially if I can split the cost. Because still $30 is pretty much too much for just me to see something.
Yeah.
Maybe even too much for me and Kirsten to see something. But if I can find that third and fourth people that want to split it, then we got something going on. So that's going to do it for our news for today. Today's special, as I announced before, is we're going over the film director Christopher Nolan, his itinerary of films, and anything else we want to say about him. Did you want to start with your? I'm sure you have a lot of words to say about him, or do you want me to go over my bit quickly?
You can go first.
Okay, so Christopher Nolan. I don't follow a whole lot of different directors that much. Christopher Nolan is definitely one of them. I'd say the first movie I heard his name attached to, because a lot of times I see movies I don't recognize who's directing them, with a few exceptions. Was I guess it'd be the Batman trilogy, probably specifically Dark Knight. But that wasn't the first movie I seen that he made. I had directed. I had seen Memento a long while ago. I think it was kind of randomly a friend was watching it, and I was super impressed, just both by the idea of the film, but also how it was filmed, how the story came together. Beside the actual photography or filmography, however you would say that. And I did not know that he directed that until like a week or two ago when you told me that he did.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was him at the time either, but I watched Prestige probably before I saw the Batman trilogy and loved that movie. I remember getting hyped because at the same time there was the Prestige and there was another movie about magicians that were coming out at the same time. I ended up watching Prestige, loved it, and never ended up watching the other one, whatever it was.
Did you say you didn't end up watching it, or you did watch it?
I watched the Prestige. I never watched the other one, whatever the other magician movie was.
Of the Illusion with Edward
Yes.
Norton and Jessica Biel.
Yes.
And that's a good movie too. I would watch that because that is a good movie.
I honestly still do want to watch it. I just never did. As far as the Batman trilogy goes, by the time the first of the Batman trilogy began, Batman Begins, I was kind of out of the whole comic book movie stuff. The Batman films that came out before it, which had nothing to do with Christopher Nolan, but I didn't like them very much, basically. Plus, there'd been enough Batman films that I'd seen. I was kind of like, eh. But a friend of mine had it on. I caught it somewhat in the middle of it. Ended up just watching all of it and enjoying it. Of course, I saw the second one when it came out. That was pretty much the motivating factor for us to even create Bearded Reviews. And I ended up seeing that actually as a double feature at an outdoor theater with, what was that Will Smith superhero movie?
Oh, Hancock?
Yes, Hancock.
Yeah, that was a piece of
shit. It was interesting enough to be on before Batman, but wasn't great.
I hated it.
And then he also did, of course, well, I guess before he did the last Batman film, he did Inception, which got great hype. I went to watch it, had a lot of fun with it. It has created a legacy of memes, the whole something within a something within a something. But again, it was another really clever story that ends with a question on everyone's mind to get them to talk about it afterwards. Even without the gimmick or without the ending, it was still a great movie with good acting, good shots, and just good ideas. Um, and then, of course, we had the last Batman film, which may have been my least favorite, but was not bad whatsoever. Enjoyed it. Uh, Although I was also constantly looking at the theater entrance to see if somebody was going to come in and shoot me like they did in Colorado. Uh, as far as the Batman movies go, though, most people remember them as being great jobs by Christian Bale and by Heath Ledger. But it wasn't just that. If you watch other Christopher Nolan films, you see the same type of cinematic presence that's given to you, the same type of story that's really intriguing that's given to you. The same kind of look that Christopher Nolan has in his other movies. In fact, if you watch The Prestige, it has enough of the same actors that it almost seems like it's another Batman movie. And of course, he has a newer film, Dunkirk, which by this time, big Christopher Nolan fan, went to watch. It was probably. There's been a lot of really good war movies lately, which there was before, but as far as the World War II and World War I realms, this was yet another one of the good World War II movies, maybe one of the first ones of this kind of newer slate of them. It was a bit different than his other movies that he's put out, but it was still really good quality, a really good story, and a little more British than his other movies. But that's pretty much. He has a couple more movies that I want to see, especially Tenet that's coming out. But a few of them I haven't seen yet, and like I said, Nolan's earned a place in my few directors that whenever he puts something out, I want to go see what it is. So let's get your take, which I'm sure is a bit more in depth than mine. I'm assuming you've seen more of his movies than I have.
Yeah. I've been a fan of Nolan. I would say the first movie I saw of his was Memento. I saw it, I think, a year after it hit theaters and it got nominated for the Oscar. I think it might have won Best Screenplay. I don't remember. I think it did. If it didn't, it was definitely nominated. But that's the first movie I saw of his, and that's not his first work. It's his first work is the only one I've not seen. It's called The Following. I looked it up. It's 1998. I've heard good things about it. It's very short. It's I think it was an hour and something minute, like 7 minutes, something like that. But his little indie debut. Memento is probably the biggest movie of his career in the sense that that's the movie that got his name out. You could tell from the first few minutes it was a different take. That's where he built his reputation for being one of the big time young innovators in Hollywood, and he's taken that to a new level with his latest works. But Memento was very innovative and different, and a lot of people don't realize he gets a lot of credit for his directing. He's a very, very good writer too. He works with his brother, and he's written, I think, pretty much everything. He's directed, I think, everything. And with his brother Jonathan, he's a very good screenwriter. His very different storytelling technique. I think he's a very underrated writer because everybody focuses on how visionary of a director he is. He's a very good writer too. And Memento was the big start of that, and Insomnia was his second movie. I enjoyed that, but it's definitely one of his lesser works. I think it was a little bit of a clash between him, Pacino, and Williams and their styles. I just don't think it really worked as well as it could have with those two. That was kind of his sophomore slump, even though it was his third movie. But I enjoyed it. I think Pacino and Williams are both good in it. I don't know. There's something off about that one. Hilary Swank it's just something they don't the cast, and I guess the cast doesn't connect as well as they do in his other films. And then after that he did that's when he did Batman Begins. After that, that was his follow up to that. And Batman Begins is probably it's probably my favorite movie of his at that time. Dark Knight is still my favorite of all of his movies, but Batman Begins gets kind of overlooked because people want to people talk about Dark Knight so much that both the sequel, I mean, both the third and the first movie kind of get overlooked. I think that trilogy as a whole stands up really well. Uh, Batman, I think Batman, Dark Knight Rises was probably the worst of the three, but it's still a good movie. It's just, I think the aftershock of Dark Knight kind of lingers with that one. But and then in between I think Inception, which is a definitive movie in his career. Before Dunkirk, I would say it's probably the most definitive after the Dark Knights. Because Dark Knights are looked at as his franchises, and that's not really looked at in his like the same kind of way that his Oscar movies that have been nominated for Oscars, have been. Inception kind of was the beginning of his new career after he finished Dark Knights, and Interstellar is probably the worst movie he's done, which is his follow up to that with Matthew McConaughey. I did not care for that much. That's probably my least favorite of his. But Dunkirk is being now. Dunkirk is being kind of his new masterpiece. I think a lot of people are saying that's his best work. I would have to say his best. Like I said, Dark Knight is my favorite. I'd go Inception probably after that, and then maybe Dunkirk. But it's a toss up between that and the Prestige. I kind of overlooked. Prestige is good. It's just I don't put it on the same level as Inception and Dark Knight and Dunkirk too, and also Memento, which I think is really, really one of the best indies of that decade, and one of the most innovative. It took the indie scene kind of in a new direction. Uh, so I would say his best work is Dark Knight for me for sure, and I'm really excited for Tenet, which he's a Bond lover, and if you can tell that in the Dark Knight movies, Lucius is basically his Q. And he basically got to live out his James Bond fantasies in Dark Knight, but he really gets to make his own kind of like James Bond-esque world with Tenet, which is, I think he's really got to stick his teeth in.
Yeah, I think we have a lot to look forward to, especially he's gotten to a point to where I think he could probably sell whatever idea he has and he wants to make to a studio and be able to make it.
Oh, yeah.
I agree so much with what you said about him being a good writer. I assumed that, but because the films all seem to be in a similar style, I assumed that he did write a lot of his films. And yeah, I think it's really good to point out. A lot of times you don't think of the writers as much, be it whether they're the same people that direct it or same people that produce it or just somebody in the background that writes the movies. But that's where a lot of the movie comes from, is what's written, what's in the script, or what's the initial idea and how that's developed. Okay, so we're going to move on to our last segment that we do each show. A little different today. Instead of having a movie that we picked out to review, we gave each other a movie to review. And I think we gave each other a few interesting movies, especially based on how much we know each other's personalities. I'll go ahead and start. Pat gave me the movie The Beach Bum to review, which I remember seeing commercials for, being a little bit intrigued by it. Probably not going to end up watching it, but he had me watch it, so I did. This is from 2019. It's directed by Harmony Korine.
Korine.
Okay, Korine.
Yeah.
He's also known for directing movies Gummo, Spring Breakers, and Kids.
He didn't direct Kids. He wrote Kids.
Oh, okay. This is starring Matthew McConaughey. You might remember him from my list of actors I don't like. Snoop Dogg and Isla Fisher, who's also known for being in Wedding Crashers, Confessionals, and Confessions of a Shopaholic. Man, I'm having trouble. Which, by the way, let me switch the picture here to The Beach Bum. There we go. So, I quickly wrote out some things here, and it turned into an almost page worth of notes. Let's go over this. First and foremost, the best way to describe this movie is it's a stoner's fantasy. Uh, and backtracking a little bit here, I don't think Pat is going to hate my review, but hopefully you aren't offended by it. I don't think you're going to be offended by it either, but just saying. I'm going to make a lot of generalities here. This is generalities, not specifics. I'm not talking about you specifically, Pat. I'm talking about stoners in general when I say a lot of this. So this, as a little quick wrap up to what the story is about, the story follows Moondog, who is McConaughey's character, who is a beach bum who lives around the Florida Keys and the southern coast of the mainland. He just kind of does whatever he wants, which is mostly drugs, booze, and sex. He marries to a rich novelist who lets him do whatever he wants, basically. His wife dies, and her will says that he doesn't inherit anything unless he releases a book of poetry. He struggles and has crazy adventures, but eventually releases the book and gets his money. That's just a really quick wrap-up of the story. So, how did I like the movie? I don't really identify with being a stoner much. I do have a stoner sense of humor. Ask a lot of people that know me. My wife even tells me constantly that I have such a stoner sense of humor for not being a stoner. But this movie wasn't so much stoner jokes as it was a stoner fantasy that also had funny moments in it. And that's hard to explain, but it's a little bit different to me. That being said, I found it really interesting the whole way through, just seeing what is going on and what's going to happen. I didn't really like the logic of the film, but at least it stayed consistent for most of the film. The end of it kind of ruins that as it gets really wacky, but we'll get to that later. Yeah, I didn't really hate the film, but I didn't love it either. I watched it with interest, and that's really good enough for me, to be honest. Not that I thought I was going to hate it. It was a lot different than I thought it was going to be in general. So I'm going to describe the movie and all the different points on it, explaining how it's a stoner fantasy. So, and I feel free to jump in for any time if you feel like, Pat, just saying. So first of all, Moondog lives a life of doing whatever he wants and being loved by all. He shows up to random outdoor events happening in the Keys while he's high or drunk or both, and grabs a mic from whoever's talking to say some stupid stuff, and then everyone claps for him. It's kind of that Moondog. Everybody just loves his harmless antics. This, to me, seems like how especially people get when they're drunk. They kind of don't read the room, I guess is a good way to put it. Just kind of shouts what's on their mind and assumes everybody's going to love them for it because it's well-intentioned. And it's not really that offensive, but I just feel like in real life people would be a little more like, even if they know this crazy dude that hangs out on the island, they'd still be kind of like, what are you doing here? You know, it kind of reminds me of Brett Hall when he was up on stage for the Stanley Cup, and everybody was kind of like, he's going to say something weird, isn't he? It shows a lot of Moondog's carefree life where he's partying all night and just sailing around all day with no responsibilities and topless women around him at all times. Again, often a stoner fantasy to not have any responsibilities, to be able to just lounge around all day. And heck, that's not really a stoner fantasy. That's everybody's fantasy. I kind of wish I could just lounge around all day. And then, as far as the topless women goes, that's most dudes' fantasies. Speaking of topless women, every woman in the movie finds him incredibly attractive despite him being unwashed and unshaven most of the time. Again, once you get a little high, you start assuming everybody finds you attractive. He goes back to the mainland where he is married to a super rich novelist whose money can take care of his every need and is also super hot. This way, he has the money he needs to do the stuff he wants without having to really, I guess, earn it. Of course, his wife is super hot because he could pick any woman he wants. She either doesn't know or doesn't mind that he's having sex with other women on a nightly basis, which again part of the fantasy. He is best friends with Lingerie, which is Snoop Dogg's character, who pretty much plays himself, which is pretty much what Snoop plays in every movie, and I
Yeah, I was about
as
to say he's always Snoop.
is not a knock on him at all because he is in real life a really cool dude. Uh, and in the movie, he's the coolest dude around who always has weed. Again, part of the fantasy of having the coolest friends that always have weed for you. Moondog has a daughter that is getting married, and that's why he's back on the mainland. Of course, the husband is going to be this normal type of dude who's portrayed as just being not cool, and it's pointed out that the person like that is so unattractive. Unattractive. How could anyone like someone like that? Again, part of the fantasy where normal people just are boring and uninteresting. He finds out that his wife is cheating on him with Lingerie and is very upset by this. Of course, he's too nice of a guy to really want revenge, but wouldn't you know it, she gets her just desserts when they get in a car wreck and only she is killed while Moondog walks away unscathed. I don't quite get how he is so upset for seeing his wife kiss his best friend just because he flat out cheats constantly. I kind of see this honestly as a little sexist, where it's kind of like I can do it but you can't because you're a girl and I'm a guy. Either way, I often also see stoners being paranoid about things like being cheated on and the police, but we'll get to the police soon. I gotta scroll down further. I got plenty more notes here. Okay, so his wife was able to pretty much keep all the money that she made separate from him legally, and he has to release a book of poetry to get it all back. This is part of his backstory that comes out more later. He's a poet even without trying. They don't really show him making much poetry except for one specific poem that they mention a couple times, which to me was both not poetic and very crass. Everyone loves it though and recognizes his talent in the movie. As he mentions in the movie, he doesn't even have to try, he's just good at it. Again, a bit of a fantasy that dirty thoughts are actually really amazing artistic thoughts, and he doesn't really have to try because trying isn't fun. The world should just recognize how brilliant he is. In fact, at this point, the lack of poetry and the one that they actually do include being not likable by me makes me wonder if the point of the movie is to be a parody more than an actual fantasy. Because I felt like they could have added in at least more examples of the poetry, even if I also still didn't like them, but they just had like the one. So he gets mad, breaks into his own home with a bunch of homeless people and throw a pool party. Also wrecks up his own place just because he feels like it, and isn't that what's important? He ends up having to go to rehab because even the judge, once he gets arrested, even the judge loves him and is willing to bend the law in his favor. Again, more fantasy. He thinks rehab is stupid because he doesn't have any problems and breaks out pretty quickly, which is still kind of more stoner commentary on real life. At this point, he's kind of running from the police or whatever, but that part of the story quickly goes away and doesn't matter anymore. It just kind of, he stops running from the police and is very visual and nobody really cares. He finally, on his own terms, decides, you know what? He's going to write a book of poetry because why not? Because he's not being told to, he's doing it because he wants to. Well, it turns out that his book of poetry wins all sorts of poetic and literary awards because it's so good. This again is just, it's kind of absurd. Like, I don't know if it was supposed to be realistic or a parody or a fantasy, but it was really absurd that he was at like a super high class function, winning world renowned awards for his book of poetry about his dick being in a vagina. But yeah, the fantasy again is he didn't really have to try to apply himself, but he's still the best in the world at what he does. Then again, his daughter decides at this point that her husband, that he thought was normal and boring, is also boring and a loser, and chooses his dad over her dad over him. For me, this is Matthew McConaughey at his worst. But it's Snoop Dogg, Zac Efron, Martin Lawrence, and Jonah Hill, all having hilarious cameos, doing a really good job at part of what made the movie interesting. Apart from all of that that I mentioned, it was also shot very beautifully. I'm guessing it was shot in location on the Keys in Florida. And not just that, but some of the different shot choices was done as well as possible, both to give you beautiful scenery, but also to emphasize the comedy when it came up. Overall, I give it 3 out of 5. For a movie that I didn't love, it's kind of weird, but I get what it was going for, and I think it does what it's supposed to do. I feel like you should judge movies on the merits that it's going for. Not every movie is going for an Oscar. This movie's going to be, again, a stoner fantasy, but also a funny movie, a feel-good movie, a movie with a lot of cameos and people having fun, and that's what it was. Really, was a fun time. And for what it was, again, I enjoyed it. So, I don't know if I'd watch it again. I don't know if I'd recommend it to others unless that's your sort of thing. But if it is your sort of thing, then you definitely do want to watch it because it hits on what it's trying to do very well.
Yeah.
So that was my review.
I gave it about the same score. It's fun. It's not anything special. It's fun. To answer your questions, the little backstory. I'm pretty sure it's kind of loosely based, probably more than loosely based, on Harmony Korine. He wrote it and directed it. The character sounds a lot like him.
Okay.
The poet, I think, is more as a sub for screenwriter.
Okay.
And director. I think, he's very much like him. He wrote Kids at a very young age and was the hottest young screenwriter in Hollywood because of that, and then pissed it all away with really weird, messed up movies and him being crazy on drugs and getting banned from David Letterman. So I kind of took this as kind of based on him, and kind of because he made his comeback on Spring Breakers. Spring Breakers was actually was a somewhat of a hit, and
I was gonna say I've heard of that movie even if I haven't seen it.
I think this was like his weird kind of autobiographical tale. The wife character is about his wife's age, and from what I understand, his wife has money, so it all kind of adds up.
So, I might have accidentally hit the nail on the head, but two funny things to point out is that he's banned from David Letterman. Bobcat Goldthwait is banned from Jay Leno. They should get together and make a movie. And then the other part, too, your description right there of him making this movie sounds a lot like a specific manga artist, except substitute the getting high all the time with being an awkward Japanese otaku dude. But at a young age, he came out with a hit manga that won awards, and then started coming out with manga with a ton of dick jokes and stuff that he wanted to be seen as super artistic, but other people were just seeing as pornographic. It's kind of funny how similar it sounds. But anyways, I gave you Robin Hood Men in Tights to review, and I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. Okay, this is directed by Mel Brooks. Stars Carrie Ewells, Dave Chappelle, Richard Lewis.
Patrick Stewart's in it, isn't he?
What?
Patrick Stewart's in it, isn't he?
Yeah, and Patrick Stewart has a small role.
Yeah.
At the end of it. I'm gonna. I hadn't seen this in a long time. This is a movie I kind of enjoyed as a kid, but wasn't like one of my favorites. Um, this is gonna be interesting. This is gonna be a negative first negative review I think I give a movie on here. It does not age well. The jokes are really really stale. It's probably the worst Mel Brooks movie I've ever seen. It's a parody of Robin Hood that has already been parodied and made fun of and made other like the Robin Hood story has already been done in so many different tales before this even came along, before the newer iterations that have come along in the last few years. Um, it just there's no point in making this movie. Even back then, in '92, it was already overdone and over parodied. Uh, it might even be '93. I don't remember what year, but it's the jokes don't hit. Um, I I just did not. I saw it back in '92, '93, or whatever it first came out. I watched it a couple times as a kid. That's the first time I watched it, like probably 20 years, and I did not care for it. It's Mel Brooks has made some great movies. Blazing Saddles is one of the funniest movies ever made. Uh, Spaceballs is one of the better parodies I've ever seen. History of the World is also a very good movie. I haven't seen the producers, uh, his version anyway. Yeah, it's and the other thing is it's supposed to be like edgy, but it's PG-13, and it's a story that really only kids really give a shit about Robin Hood. So having sex in this movie made absolutely no sense. And it's like too edgy for the audience intended for. Also, it just doesn't work. Dave Chappelle's bad in it. It's probably his worst movie performance. He's younger and it's just getting started, so it's forgivable. Carrie Ewells is okay, but I don't know. It just doesn't work for me at all. And I was done before I finished it. It's I'd give it 2 stars out of 5, 2 beards out of 5. It's just really just not worth visiting in my opinion. Not his best work. He's a satire genius, but this was his probably biggest flop.
It's funny. Honestly, everything you said is pretty much true. I think I still give it a better grade because of nostalgia factor, but I did go back to see that. Man, it's probably like 7 or 8 years ago, which is still a while ago. But even when I went to see it, it was kind of like you said. A lot of the jokes were dated, um, and besides being dated, they were just a lot funnier when I was a kid than being, I guess, an adult. Like you said, it seems to hit a lot more and kind of like a age range of around 10 to 16. But then, like you said, the edginess, quote unquote edginess parts of it were more around um, based on sex, which is usually not something you aim at that same uh, age range. Uh, it reminds me of an older version of like, I mean, looking back on it, an older version of like Anchorman, where there's a lot of moments where you're kind of like, that was a funny moment, and you remember it forever. Uh, I might like Anchorman a lot more if I went back to watch it, but when I initially watched Anchorman, I wasn't a big fan of it. It's just had a bunch of moments that stuck with me. Uh,
Comedy.
yep. Uh, yeah, I I'm a big fan of Carrie Ewells, and I do like his job here, but he could have played an actual really good Robin Hood instead of a good parody Robin Hood.
I felt like he was like kind of still in Princess Bride mode in this movie too,
Yeah, I feel the
and
same.
it was weird. Like the whole movie's weird. I'm just like no, nothing works to me. Like it made it work for me as a kid, but as an adult, I'm watching this and I'm like, what the fuck am I watching?
That's what I'm saying. I felt the same way when I went back to watch it. I still, again, keep it in my nostalgic heart, but I do have to admit it's one of the things that In fact, I found this with a lot of things. I go back to watch stuff I liked as a kid, be it the late 80s or early 90s, and it does not hold up, especially cartoons, but sometimes movies like this. Not to really get on it, I still think it's fun movie to watch. I'd recommend it to people I know that are between the ages of 10 and 16.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's going to be our show for tonight. And I'll have this up to watch on YouTube. Let us know what you think about the reviews. Let us know what you think about Christopher Nolan in the comments. Let us know what you think about the different news stories that we covered. And stay tuned for our next episode, which could be coming out whenever. But we'll have some newer reviews to do. We'll have a different segment, and we'll have newer news stories, of course, assuming that there is any. News is kind of dry when there isn't many movies coming out. But we'll see you guys later.
Later.